open. Okay. All right. No fancy bells and whistles for this one. Just us and the talking about the book. So welcome to the Surrender Experiment Weekly Book Club. Week, I don't know what, but chapter 2 for sure. We are talking about today. So I'll lead us just in 1 minute of just silent meditation. Well, you know what? Let's do a little more than a minute. I'll just surprise you when we're done. Okay, here we go. All right, coming back to the here and now. Well, that was great. Great book club meeting, you guys. Everybody, have a great one. That was, woo. Glad we didn't belabor it. We just a nice 2-minute meditation, and I'm good. Let's go. All right, we'll say a little prayer, as is our habit here. I don't know why we don't say a prayer before our other stuff. Maybe we will. Who knows what's going to happen next? Nobody. That's the excitement of life. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. God's spirit, higher power, the beauty and truth of the universe, please inform us every moment. Please open our hearts, our souls, our pores, our cells, our very DNA, just to just absorb in the truth and the light that you want to share with us, that all is well in every moment, and it could never be otherwise. Please help us to listen carefully and clearly to the new thing that wants to emerge inside of us. This book is about an ongoing spiritual awakening, and each person here is in the middle of an ongoing spiritual journey, an awakening to themselves. Please help us to use this book to help inform, hasten, um, ease this opening. And please just share with us any valuable insights you would have us uh, see and understand. Amen. It's a very nice mustache you have, Angie. Sorry, it's not nice to pick on a sick person, but this is the kind of, again, she says I was a very nice brother, and this is what I remember. I remember me just relentlessly picking on the poor girl. Okay, so chapter 2. Um, let's dig in and read a little bit. And okay. Even in my youth, I loved to figure out how things worked. So it was inevitable that my analytical mind would become fascinated by trying to understand my relationship to the voice inside my head. Before I could enjoy this, what happened? Oh, the size changed. Okay. Before I could enjoy this intellectual fascination, however, I had to get over the fact that the personal mind was driving me crazy. So that's just very interesting in and of itself, which we'll talk about. I'm just going to read a little bit more and then we'll chat about some of this. Every time I saw something that voice made some comment about it, I like it, I don't like it, I'm not comfortable with this. This reminds me of, as I became more and more accustomed to watching all of this, a few questions naturally arose. First, why is the voice talking all the time? If I see something, I'm instantly aware of seeing it. Why does the voice have to tell me that I see it and how I feel about it? Here comes Mary. I don't like seeing her today. I hope she doesn't see me. I know what I see and I know what I feel. After all, I'm the one in here seeing and feeling. Why does it have to get vocalized in my mind? So I feel like that's a really good sort of section to start with. Um, so here he is seeing his mind, whereas before the voice was him, right? And this is the spot we all find ourselves in. We find this voice talking and we believe it to be us. And so in a lot of cases, we're not aware of what's happening. Let me try this. Okay. Um, so the first thing I want to say, and I think I've said this before, but I think it bears repeating. For me, there are levels of consciousness, levels of happiness. And the worse off you are, the less you are aware of the less you are aware of your thoughts and the torture that they can, the havoc they can wreak in your life, right? So the least happy people that you're going to meet believe everything that their minds tell them. And by all means, go out and investigate this for yourself and see. I've done a pretty thorough investigation. But the most unhappy people I encounter, it's like you can't get a wedge in there, in between their thoughts, because you say something and they don't go, "Oh, yes, I see that my mind is." They're responding from the ego defending itself, and so it's impossible to have a conversation just about with someone like this, and like you have to do so much work, like that it's relentless, and it's just like these are the people that I generally just kind of throw back and say, you know what, you're just not ready to have this conversation. Go back and tenderize yourself for about 5 years and then let's talk again, right? So um so so this thing right here that's happening with him, where he's now become aware of his mind, whereas before he wasn't, right? So this is the initial stage of awakening. Now these awakenings can happen um, slowly or quickly. And for him, it was a sudden moment in this case. But I look at myself, not so much for the last 5 years or so, but the 10 years before that, I was in this process. I was in this process of, like I was listening to Eckhart Tolle, and Eckhart Tolle was like, watch your mind. And I remember this was about the time that I started working with Natasha. And that gave me a lot of personal freedom. So just that alone right there, the difference between I believe myself to be this human being, Evan, and I believe that these are my thoughts, and I believe that my thoughts are telling me that this is real. Um, that's that's what we have to call unconsciousness. And so watching my thoughts, and it was a 5 year process for me. It was a 5 year process before I graduated to the next level, right? Um, because at the end of that, and this is how it kind of works with spiritual awakenings, right? There's this huge bump you get from a spiritual awakening, right? Where you get this opening and you're living in this opening and it's an expanding and it's doing all this stuff and it's great. And there's kind of a time limit on it. And not really a time limit, but it's like anything else. You learn it and it's like there's something, you've grasped it, And now it's not providing you that same kind of new energy anymore. It's like, how long is a new car new? It's kind of the same idea because you've been living in this new reality. And what happens is there's still plenty wrong. Like you can watch your thoughts and do all that, but there's still a lot wrong going on in the system. And you can't kind of deny. So even though you feel better, you feel much more relief, it doesn't solve everything. There's a t-shirt. Nothing solves everything. um, but so for all of us here, this habit, this practice of watching your thoughts as much as you can is a path. It is very much a path. So, for those of you who are developing new meditation, sort of regimens and things like that, the meditation that I did was watching my thoughts. Now, some people like try to tune out thoughts, but I kind of went the other way. I went the other way of using the meditation to listen and to watch what was inside my head, and I don't regret that. And again, throughout the day, especially, it's good to do it when you're not triggered. It's harder to do it when you're triggered. It's great to do it when you're triggered, but it's hard to do because you're getting so taken over by the mechanism. So anyway, let me just pause there and just open it up and see if anybody has anything they want to say about this notion of seeing your thoughts, watching your thoughts, being tortured by your thoughts, etc. Anybody have anything they want to say about any of that? Okay, good. All right, so we're all on board. That's fine. That's fine. Everybody's on board and knows they need to be watching their thoughts, right? And I'm assuming you guys are doing that. Now, we go a lot deeper than that in this thing. So that's why I like this book, because we can learn from this book, but then we can also see like what we're doing sort of more above and beyond what this book says. So what I would like you to do, watching your thoughts is a starting point, but I would also like you to see how the thoughts trigger the feelings. That's a next level kind of thing. And to understand that the feelings are just as unreal as the thoughts. Like, this is a thought, this is a feeling, this is a reaction. None of that is me. None of that is me. Which again, not the easiest thing to do, but a very worthwhile task. And listen, I will say this to you in all honesty, there is nothing, and I mean nothing, that uh, that is, there's no better way that you could spend your time than doing the stuff that we're talking about here. Because all of it leads to freedom, which leads to enjoying your life more, like, or doing the things that you want to do or supposed to do, etc. To the point where I prescribe people all the time when they're going in and they're trying to work to not even pay attention to their work, but to pay attention to this stuff, to pay attention to the thoughts and to the feelings. Because when you do, you kind of quarantine the parts from taking over. And then you're able to actually be more effective. So it seems like this seems completely wrong. Like, why would I take my mind off the task that I'm doing and being responsible and coming over here and paying attention to my thoughts and feelings? Because you are not focusing and engaging on that task. Your mind is completely preoccupied with all the fears and all the stuff, and I can't do this and I can't do that. You know what? So your mind is already completely screwing you. All you're doing now is becoming aware that it's screwing you, and then by you becoming aware that it's screwing you, it's screwing you less. And then you're actually more productive. But you see, the mind says, I don't have time for that. I've got to work. But you're not working anyway. You're obsessing about something. you know and then if you are working, it doesn't matter because you're so focused on what you're doing, you're not lost in your thoughts. That's fine. If you're in the flow, you're in the flow. None of this applies when you're in the flow. So I don't know if I've said this enough. There's only two things to do in life. There's be your absolutely wonderful, beautiful, authentic self. That's number one. Do that as much as you can. And then when that's not possible, then you do everything. Then everything we do applies to when that's not possible. There was this, I had an acting teacher and he said, no, 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 all of this stuff that we're talking about here in acting class, none of this applies. You want to listen to your instincts. You want to listen to your instincts. All of this is for when your instincts aren't working, when you can't get in touch with your instinct. Same thing here. That's why I love that. It's brilliant. It's like, no, just be your absolute, true, authentic self. But then when something shows up that's not that, become very aware of that. Become very aware of the thing that is not you, that is in trying to invade your space. Okay, so moving on here. So this next stuff. So I'm going to read these two sections, these two quotes that I underlined. If I, here, I'll let you guys see this. Not to hide it from you. If I see something, I'm instantly aware of seeing it. Why does the voice have to tell me that I see it and how I feel about it? That's a great question. Why does it have to get vocalized in my mind? So I'd love to hear if you guys have any thoughts about why that is. I don't have anything conclusive. I have a couple of theories. Well, I have something that's at least semi-conclusive. Anybody have any thoughts on why does the mind feel the need to vocalize and say something like, I'm seeing Mary right now? You know, why is it narrating our experience? Any guesses? Any thoughts? Natasha especially loves a quiz. She loves to be quizzed. Okay, it's part of being in a physical body, says Angie. Yeah, I mean, I think there's some truth to that. I was thinking this morning, not to get all biblical and stuff, but it's funny how, certain things are written a certain way, and I didn't identify with any of the language of the Bible, right? I mean, obviously there's truth in the Bible for sure, and in a lot of other texts, but it would talk about like the flesh is weak. So I actually think it's actually a pretty good description of it now, right? Because it's our body, our physiology. If you notice in your false selves, you are obsessed with security. This is what is constantly undoing you on a daily basis. You don't feel safe. So here's the answer that I have. Here's the best answer I have. That ego is very interested in identity, right? So everybody, it talks about in here, everybody's very concerned about how they look to others, etc., how they come across, who they are, how they're seen, what's my purpose. It's almost like the ego is vying for identity. And that's kind of my best answer. It's like, I'm real, I exist, I matter, see me. And so if it just sits there quietly, then you're going to have access to your higher self. It's not going to be seen. One of the aspects of the ego is it's trying to be important. It wants to be important, it wants to be loved. And so it sort of comes from that. It wants to be the authority in your head. There's this whole other thing. It's a 12-step thing, and it's called Prime Time is now. But they talk about the voice in our head speaks to us with great authority. When we listen to that voice, it feels enlivened. Unfortunately, not really in a good way. Us listening to that voice in that way and believing it doesn't actually help the voice feel safe. It's like the analogy I use all the time about handing the keys to the car to the 3-year-old to let them drive. When you let the 3-year-old demands it wants its autonomy, it wants to show that it can do what the grown-ups can do. And then when you hand the keys of the car to the 3-year-old, does the 3-year-old inherently feel safe when they're driving? I remember one time my dad let me drive the truck. I was sitting in his lap and we're going around this big turn. I'm like this. And then and it's like a 1970s Ford pickup truck, right? Maroon, by the way. I'm 4 years old. I'm holding the steering wheel, and it's this long sweeping turn, and this is manual, right? This is a manual steering wheel, right? It's not an auto steering wheel. And so it's like halfway through, I just got tired and let go. So that's what happens. And this is a perfect analogy for our lives. This is what happens when we let the ego run the show, right? The ego goes, we got to do all this, we got to do this. And then halfway through, it's like, man, there's a lot of work. Forget this. And it quits. So yeah, there's this part that's vying for identity, that wants to be seen, that wants to be acknowledged. So I mean, the true answer is I have no idea why the mind incessantly talks. Um, there are times when I look at it and I go, the mind is really an addiction that we all have. In some ways, you could say it's the primary addiction, which is why when we look at it and we pay attention to it, we start to break that addiction, and it's such a powerful tool. Okay, so I'm going to read this next part here and let you guys see. Oh, anybody want to say anything about that? Anyone anything about the say anything about the ego and its vying for identity and why it comments on literally everything that it sees? No? Okay, I'm sneaking in a couple of nuts there under the radar so nobody notices. Okay. All right, we'll carry on. Okay. I now had two driving forces awaken inside regarding this newly found voice in my head. One was the desire to shut it up, which we'll talk about that. Most likely that's a part, yes? Right? The desire to shut somebody else up. Does that sound like God? Probably not. And the other was the pure fascination and yearning. Yearning is also a very sketchy word, to understand what that voice was and where it came from. So it's hard to say. We don't know. We're not in his experience. It's possible to say that those are both parts. But it's also possible that one of these underneath is this, deep desire to know the truth, because there is this movement within us, and you all have it, that is moving us toward more clarity, more peace, right? And a lot of times that is masked by the loudness of the voice in our head and the ego. But it is there. There is a force. But see, so one of my favorite things to talk about in spirituality is paradox, because it's only when you start getting to paradox that you start getting to truth. So how is it that our higher power, the universe, etc., whatever you want to call it, is completely 100% fine with everything exactly as it is, and at the same time is also pulling us toward a deeper understanding of truth? How does that work? And because I've had some experience with it, I, I guess the first time, you're right. So look, so we're all here and we've worked together a lot, everybody who's on this call right now, and we've done a lot of really good work about habits. And where that all started for me, and this is a sort of foundational moment in my life, was on the tennis court. I realized that I was trying to do too much. I had an awakening. It wasn't like a full blown spiritual awakening, but it was a piece of clarity. I realized I was missing all the time in tennis because I was trying to get attention. And there was this desperate need to get attention. And if it couldn't get positive attention, it got negative attention. Like for me at this point, not even from my father or anybody else. And so that's when I realized I'm trying to do too much. All I need to do in every case is take this ball and hit it over the net. But what I was doing was something completely different. I was trying to look good and look cool and be amazing. I was trying to do all these things that had nothing to do with the very simple task that was in front of me, right? So this is when you talk about the voices. All these voices are saying you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to be great, you have to be amazing. And they completely obscure the simple task. That's why I say when you're going about your job and you're doing the things that you do, forget about trying to do a good job. Don't even worry about that. That'll take care of itself. Focus on the voice that's telling you all this crazy crap so that you can start to step out of it. But so this habit of simply hitting the ball over the net, that's where this emerged from. And now I've forgotten why I started to go down this path. Can anybody help me? How did
Yeah,
I get
where
stuck
you
with it?
this is how you came to this spiritual awakening.
Right, because I
Um,
was talking about this group and I was talking about habits and I was talking about how this
Paradox.
paradox, thank you. So what I realized was in this, right, because all the students that I work with, I do the same exercise with them in tennis. We sit there and we hit the ball over a net 100 times. So they have to hit the ball over the net 50 times before we can move on to anything else. And this is like I teach it like like one like you see all those movies like the Kung Fu Masters. You have to sit outside on this like stoop for 30 days or something. You know, so it's like you don't get to go to gear two until you get this first exercise, which is just hit the ball over the net. What do they want to do? They want to go, oh, I want to hit the ball hard, and but how come I don't get to hit it hard and low over the net and all that stuff? And I go, because of this, because you need to be able, this is the foundation of everything. If you can do this, you'll be able to do all these other things. And of course, they don't get it because why? Because the ego's in charge. And so, what happened for me in this tennis, which was a very spiritual thing, was I was very, very comfortable where I was. I was very satisfied with how I played and what I did. And the whole object of it was self love. I was loving myself to play better. So instead of my parts having to sabotage themselves to get my attention, I spent my time loving. I didn't know there were parts at the time. I just spent time loving myself. And then I found that I could now, because I didn't have to do so much to prove anything, I was loved regardless. I could just focus on the simple task. And here's where the paradox was. When I surrendered to just being exactly where I was at, I got so much better. There was this natural impulse and growth that happened when I stopped trying to push. So again, we were talking with somebody yesterday in one of the groups, that pushing energy seems like it's trying to make you better, but it's not. It's actually trying to sabotage you. And we see that very much in our habits challenges. When I got to do more, I started to see that in my push-ups. I was like trying to go, it's like, okay, I got to 10. I want to keep doing 10. I want to get to 12. It's like, oh, wait a minute. The pusher, the forcer, right? That's not the real growth that we're looking for. So, okay, so we have this thing, which sort of proves the point. It's like you have this spiritual awakening and you have so much more clarity than you had before, and so much more, you can see so much more, but you don't see everything. None of us sees everything. I've exposed, I don't know how many parts in the last 5 years, lots, and come through them. And there's still parts to in myself that I know are going to come up and that I'm going to see. And that's okay with me because my higher self doesn't care. So in this, he is identified with a voice in his head, right? Even though he's talking about the voice, he has another part that's so mad at the voice. Do you see how that works? And he believes the voice that's mad about the voice in his head is his voice. Of course, it is not. It's just another thought. And this is a situation we're all in kind of all the time. There are those voices that sound compelling. So pay attention to this voice and realize that every voice that comes through your head is not true. And like I wrote in the post yesterday, I don't know if everybody saw it, but every thought is an invitation to go down a certain energy pathway. So when you start to understand that, the voice that says, you better get going right now, that is an invitation. That is an invitation to step directly into manicness and urgency. And if you have enough consciousness to stop and see it and say, do I want to step into manicness and urgency? Right? So again, seeing the thought as it comes and then seeing the panic. That's what a lot of people don't talk about, is seeing the thought and the emotional reaction to the thought. So we're becoming aware of both, just so we can save you a little time. Because as we know, that emotional reaction is a part. And that's, again, we don't have any parts language in this book, but that's one of the brilliant things, is we have this parts language to help inform us. Okay, anybody have any comments or want to say anything? Because if not, I will jump to the next portion. Okay. Okay, there was no way that others had not noticed this voice talking inside. I really, I really enjoy this. Because obviously there are thousands of years of religious tradition that, you know, that talk about this very thing. And he just hadn't seen it yet, right? But it's almost like it's almost cute. And then I think, but I think one thing that's really interesting. So there's all these thousands of years of people dealing with this in their own way, whether it's Buddhism or whatever. Hold on, there was a comment from Angie. Yes, being aware of, and if you can see the connection between the thoughts and the feelings, that's ideal. That's kind of when we have a part, right? A part is made of an idea, a thought, and the energetic reaction to it, and they're kind of mashed together into a part. I also, so it's like I scanned through Freud, so he was looking in the field of psychology, not spirituality. I scanned through Freud trying to answer my questions. Hold on. I read book after book, but I found no direct reference to the voice talking inside. So that's very interesting. So we have this whole field of psychology here in America, which is how we deal with this stuff in a lot of cases. And you know that psychology actually meant that the original roots of that word are the study of spirit. Did you know that? It's now been almost completely divorced from spirit. It was the study of spirit, you know. So I find that fascinating. But so you're not going to find this separation from the voice in psychology. I guess the parts language starts to do that. So that is a breakthrough and a revolution in psychotherapy. But in general, you're not going to find that there because there is no notion that we are not the voice. That's just not really a popular idea in psychology. It's not what they teach. They teach you, I was in therapy, and which was, I guess, important and necessary and good and great in some ways. But again, after 5 years of intensive therapy, week after week, processing tons of stuff in between, I was incredibly emotionally fluid and just as trapped as when I started. And you know, when I talk to people about it, I hear a lot of that same experience. I get a lot of head nods when I say that. Because a couple of things. There is not this investigation of how not real all of this stuff is. That's one of the problems with it. They treat it as very real, and that's a problem. And then I'm a big fan of ACA and people doing that work. So that's adult children of alcoholics and going in and processing all that stuff. The one potential, I remember somebody asked me a question and I talked about it after I did a share or something. And I said, the one potential drawback I see, or the one thing, and man, they got so mad at me because I had threatened their system. That, you know, that they had found their answer. And I said, the one drawback or the one potential thing is you get people who are like, well, I had to set boundaries for my child, you know, because this person was a toxic person. And you get into that place. And now the whole understanding of what we're really trying to do, which is to free you from that, that's giving the keys to the 3-year-old now. That's saying, okay, you are now going to handle my relationships. You do not want your 3-year-old handling your relationships, just like you don't want them driving your car, right? That is not the approach. You're not trying to empower this 3-year-old to make the choices. That's the last thing you want to do. You want to understand that this 3-year-old is in terrific pain. And just because they're screaming and stomping their feet up and down, that just means you hold them more and you love them more. You don't say, all right, here's the lollipop. And okay, yes, you can call up this person at 12:30 at night because you feel lonely. No, that is not what you should do. That is not what you should do. Or demand, I demand that you love me. It's like, okay, well, we'll see how that goes. Let's see how that works. Good job, 3-year-old. But so you're not going to see this reference and this understanding of this separation between your true self. But again, in IFS therapy, they do talk about this, and that's why I think it's the best form of therapy if you're going to do it. Still, the ego can still be in charge of that entire operation too. The ego can now be, oh, I'm going to identify all my parts and I'm going to break free in this way. You know what I mean? So it's like you can't ever get away from it. Like Buddhism teaches you to detach, right? You must be detached from things. You must not attach your worth and your value to things. And then you have people going, oh, shit, I got attached. It's like, well, of course you're going to get attached. And now the problem is now you're attached to being unattached. You see, because the ego is trying to understand and fix. So it can take these spiritual ideas and it can just drive yourself crazy trying to get the spirituality because the ego is trying to get spiritual, which is never going to happen in a million years. The ego cannot get spiritual. The ego can relax. The ego can fall apart. The ego can die. The grip can lessen. That can happen. But the ego is not going to self-actualize. The ego is, as Angie said so perfectly at the beginning of the call, the ego is part of the body system. It's part of the survival mechanism. And that's all it is. And again, I wrote this down in the thing. The ego does not care about your happiness. That's one of the most important things to understand. The ego that tells you it is constantly trying to get you to happiness is lying. It is not trying to get you to happiness. It's trying to keep you stuck in the same cycle. That's what's so confusing about this whole thing is the mind is constantly trying to mislead you and send you in the wrong direction. That's why we have to pay so much attention to it. Because you say, I can't pay attention to my thoughts while I'm at work. Why? So I can give my ego free rein to derail me while I'm at work instead of paying attention to it and seeing that it's trying to lead you down the wrong road. Because if I'm at work and let's say I'm editing a piece and I have a boss, I don't know if he's going to like this. I don't know if he might not like this. He might decide he doesn't like any of the work that I do. He might fire me. That's what I'm thinking about when I'm working. How does that help anything or anybody? It doesn't. But if I'm watching my thoughts, you'll notice as you do this that you can do any task and watch your thoughts while you do it. So again, and one of the things I wanted to make sure I said is like, look, each one of you, everybody on planet Earth is involved in this spiritual awakening. You all are a lot more aware of the fact that you are on this path. And there is nothing more important, right? So as much as you can, devote yourself to this seeing, to this becoming free. Every thought complex, every emotion that you see and witness, and you go, aha, I see that. I see how it's trying to take me over and make me think that it's me. That's what the mind is doing. And that's why I highlighted the thing before. Your mind is constantly trying to make you think that it is you. That's what's so dangerous about it. You want to get out of ever thinking that any thought that comes through your mind is you. It's not. It is not. Okay. Let's see here. One second. I'm going to the next passage here. Well, and this next thing really kind of speaks to what I was just saying. I was on a journey of exploration, a journey of learning beyond anything I could have imagined. So when you're imagining, in large part, you are talking about what the ego or the mind complex can imagine. And this statement that he's saying is 100% true. What you are, who you are, extends so far beyond the limits of your imagination that it's almost absurd. The beauty, the greatness that you have inside of you is so penned in by all these thoughts about how you're not good enough and you're not doing the right things and all this. And it's all garbage. It's all nonsense. You are infinite in your potential. And you are so hamstrung by this mind that is telling you all these things that have nothing to do with truth. And so, as it says here, I was on an exploration. Explore this mind of yours. So what we said a couple of weeks ago is that we're using this book now not just as, oh, this is interesting, but as a tool for having the same kind of spiritual awakenings this guy had. Because who wouldn't want that? This guy is successful on both a spiritual plane and on a physical plane. Like, why not do both while we're here? But let's make sure we're not just successful on the physical plane and just still tortured inside, please. Just for me, as a as a as a favor to me. And this is really poignant. I couldn't believe the amount of self-consciousness and fear being expressed through that voice. I bet you guys can. I bet you guys can believe it. Because of the work that we've done, because of the work that you've done, you are very aware of the self-consciousness, the fear, the pain that you're in, which makes you rare human beings, just so you know, that you're willing to sort of sit here and pay attention to this. Because the vast, mass of humanity are going to go to their graves just having been miserable their whole lives and trying to outrun it. So I applaud you for the courage it takes to open up to all of this, and feel it. But absolutely, there is so much. Look, this is what we all share in common. Inside of each of us, there is a part that is terrifyingly, horrifyingly lonely. Tell me if that's not true. Tell me if the next things I'm saying are not true. Tell me, each of us has a part where we feel completely overwhelmed by life because we were a small child trying to figure out some sort of addictive household that was filled with either rage or alcohol or abuse or whatever the heck it was. And we felt all alone with it and having to figure it all out. We all share this in common, this deep sense of it's too much. I can't do it. What else do we all share in common? We all pretty much share in common this fear of abandonment. That we are going to be left and going to be all alone. And so we hold desperately on to different things and people and so on and so on. You see what I mean? It's like we all have these things, these deep pains, and we each have them in our own individual way. And that's what we are spending our time doing here is we aren't just finding these and articulating them and spending time with them. We are also deeply exploring the true aspect of ourselves as well as a counterpoint so that we're not just spending all of our time undoing these knots of negativity. And that's a fine way to do it, but we're balancing the scale because we want you to see your beauty at the same time that you're letting go of the blocks to your beauty. Trapped. Very good, Angie. Yes. I haven't met anybody who doesn't feel trapped. Okay, Wendy, it was nice to have you. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day. We might actually get through a whole chapter in one sitting. That would be a major accomplishment for our little book club here. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that nobody else is talking. Okay. Here, I'll share this. I could see how much fear of rejection and non-acceptance were being expressed through that mental dialogue. You want to come sit over here? Mr. Banks? Want to be on camera with me?
Sure.
Okay, come sit here. Yeah. Ian's having a Pop-Tart, but he's going to join me over here. I hope that's all right with all of yous.
Ian!
Here, I'll take the headphones off. Say it one more time, Natasha.
Ian!
This is my lovely son. Here.
I can't see him.
Here, scooch over. You can't see Ian? Here, scooch over here.
Ian!
There he is. Look at that charming young man.
Just woke up.
Angie's nephew.
Aw.
He's on spring break. And so he was starting to like stay up until like 2 a.m. So I had to enforce
No.
I had to enforce a wake up time, and look at him now. He's like wrecked.
No, listen, right? It wasn't 2. You just felt the need to wake me up before like 11. Which is understandable. It just didn't have to be 7 in the morning.
I stand by my decision. Okay. Okay. So it says, I could see how much fear of rejection and non-acceptance were being expressed through that mental dialogue. I read that already, right? He wanted it to stop. I mean, you guys feel the same way, that basically that wanting it to stop, that's a part, right? It's a part that it's like, because you kind of hear it in his voice. It's like, I can't stand this. I can't stand this voice. I want it to go away. That is absolutely 100% the attitude and the shape of a part. There's nothing in the universe that your higher power is uncomfortable with. But this part of him, this voice says, I cannot stand this voice. I have to get rid of it. That's a part, because that part's in agony. Okay. Moving on. Now I'm determined to get through. I had been so lost in it that I never noticed it as separate from me. Which I think we kind of covered that pretty well in here, that we're so lost in it. But I think it's important to realize too, and to recognize that we are going to be lost in it. That is going to happen. We're probably in our lifetimes never going to be completely 100% free of the voice. Maybe it's possible. You're all young spring chickens, so we all have plenty of time. We all have theoretically decades, right, to really continue to break free. That's right, Angie. That's right. The true higher power energy is never disappointed with us, never upset. We can make the wrong choice 34 times in a row, but that loving energy is never, ever going to say, what's your problem? It has infinite patience. And freshly in every moment, it'll say, you know what you should do is you should go this way. And then we don't take it, and it says, that's fine. But you know what you should do? You should try this. Always there's never like, so this sort of angry, vengeful God that, strikes people down, because they're not listening.
Ooh, like me.
Yeah, that's kind of Ian's temperament. He would be like Ian would be not the nicest God. Yeah. Very tough. You can look at him. You can see how he's a very, very tough individual. Merciless.
My Hawaiian punch shirt is very intimidating.
So I didn't like the voice of the mind talking all the time, right? And then the final sort of beat in this thing is I had not yet begun to fight. So we'll leave it on that note. But see, his plan, and what I've seen is there are a lot of systems out there, and I think I've said this, there are a lot of systems out there that accurately diagnose the problem. The mind is telling me great untruths, and it is destroying my experience of living. But it's then what people do with that is really where it kind of goes haywire. And again, all those systems are better than just believing and following the voice. But a lot of the systems have to do with trying to, well, you take something like cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm now trying to rewrite the voice in my head. Good luck to you. I wish you a lot of good fortune with that. That turns out to be kind of like a diet. And for those of you who have attended Overeaters Anonymous and those kind of things, you know how well diets work, right? So yes, you can do it for a time. You can employ self-will, and you can try to stop your thoughts for a time. There will, however, most likely, I can't say anything definitively because I'm not living your life. There will most likely come a time where you finally go, because What's the thing doing the pushing? What's the thing with the self-will? It's self. It's ego. Right? And anything that you do of ego is going to collapse at a certain point because it's built on pushing and forcing. And at a certain point, the ego is going to get tired. Just like we talked about, just like the little kid in me, the 4-year-old, halfway through the big turn, I'm like, oh, this is it. Forget this. You know, luckily my dad was paying attention and he caught the wheel. But I don't think he was paying attention as much as he should have. Like we started to kind of go off the road. I don't know if you remember that, Angie. You were probably a baby.
Your dad let you drive when you were 4?
He let me drive. He let me just, I was in his lap and I was steering the steering wheel.
This is the first time I liked your dad.
So I guess this is an important note to end on. We're observing the mind. We're paying attention to the mind. We are not fighting the mind. That is not something that we're engaged in, because the only thing that can fight the mind is the ego. Right? And that is a fight that will never be won. You cannot solve the problem from the level of the problem, says Einstein. So the ego cannot solve the ego. That will never, ever, ever happen in a million years. Only when we can separate and get above the ego, and that's what we're doing when we're watching our thoughts, that's when we can start to have some perspective. That's such a beautiful frame there, Natasha. I demand that from now on, this is what we get whenever you show up on camera. This is now my favorite image of all time right here. Look at that. I'm surprised we don't see sheep grazing outside the window. I'd like, can you do that? Can you, even if it's a cardboard cutout of a sheep, I'm fine with that. If you could just place one outside the window, that would make me.
Squirrels will.
Squirrels, that's close enough. Can you like put a little sheep costume?
You could bleach their
You
fur.
could bleach the squirrel. Yeah. Okay, so I think we did it, everybody. Thank you for your cooperation. We got through one whole chapter in 1 week. That's we're getting better at it, I think. Well, and thank you all for listening to my insane babbling for this time. But you know, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say insane babbling, right? Because that diminishes what we're doing here, and you know, that's my own self-consciousness speaking. That's a part. You see how it shows up? Schnibes. Thank you. Shana remembers Schnibes and Bun. Yeah, no, thank you for being here, and thank you for listening, and thank you for participating in your own spiritual awakening, because it is legitimately the best thing that you can do for planet Earth, right? When you awaken, when you get more access to your heart, then everybody who comes in contact with you, whether they know it or not, feels a little bit more of that energy. That's why, you know, when Natasha shows up into a room, people light up, you know, and like we talked about with Dawn, right? Because there's that energy that they have that speaks louder than whatever words they're trying to say, right? So continue to invest this time in yourself and treat yourself with incredible self-love. And I will see you, I think some of you later today even.
No words for how much I love your son.
Okay, well, see, that's where we get into paradox, right? You can't, something that's beyond what the mind can express, the love that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. What a
Thank
cute,
you,
show me your shirt. He just got this shirt yesterday.
Oh, I love that.
You guys, this is what spring break looks like. Okay. In the desert, we're 14. Okay.
Amazing.
I'm still sleeping in.
You slept in an hour and a half. All right. Love you guys.
Thank you,
Bye.
Ev.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Evan.
Hi, Ian. Love
Thanks,
you.
y'all.
Yeah.
Hi, Ian.